Okay, I'm sure I look fantastic, but this is all about me being pretty, so that's why we do this. But something I've been doing recently is I've been making my own tabletop RPG. Very professionally done book right here. And I'm just wanting somewhere to put my thoughts about it, so I thought I'd put it here. The basics of my system are it's all D6s. It's all six-sided dice. It's probably a callback to original D&D. I've never played original D&D or second edition or 3.5 or anything like that. The closest I've played to 3.5 is like some Pathfinder, Starfinder kind of stuff. And then, and then obviously a lot of 5e, because that's what everyone's played, right? So, there was a lot of issues that I wanted to solve that I had with 5e. Specifically, the issues that I wanted to solve were failure to do stupid things, which, to be fair, you absolutely can, or the DM absolutely just can arbitrarily say, you don't have to roll for this. But I wanted to make it an easier, like, objective thing to do instead of whatever roll it is. But rolling for stupid things, I wanted to make more clear cut, I guess. Maybe it's more clear cut. And then combat, I wanted it to be a little faster simply because I feel like the roll for attack, or roll to hit and then roll for damage, is just really, really slow. So, with that being said, I did create my own system a little bit. It has most of the classes up to level 3 right now, and that's like all I'm doing really. So the idea, there's a lot of ideas I wanted to, but the idea with magic and casting is that there are no cantrips, and that's very intentional. When you think about how many spells you cast as an individual in, say, 5e, right? It's a long fight if you are casting, well, all right, at lower levels. At lower levels specifically, because that's mostly what I've played. I've played a little bit of higher level stuff, like above level 10 in 5e. But at lower levels, it is so many casters. You just get like a bunch of cantrips, and you can do a bunch of stuff with it, right? You can cast Friend, you can cast Light, you can cast Mage Hand, and you usually take like one, maybe two attacking ones. You don't really need two attacking ones. One's usually enough, but it still seems crazy to me that like your cantrips can just do whatever for you. And yeah, some cantrips, I think even some cantrips is Acid Spray a cantrip. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember off the top of my head, but like I think Acid Spray is a cantrip. And part of it with Acid Spray is it's like a saving throw rather than maybe a level 1 spell. But it's a saving throw rather than a roll to attack, stuff like that. So like when you're just given free reins to do stuff in a system like that, where it's just like, all right, anything in the player's handbook, right? Even if you just limited it to that, spellcasters seem so much more broken to me. From an RP standpoint, from just whatever standpoint you want, right? If you pick, like, I've played several warlocks, Great Old One warlocks just have telepathy. Like, that's just something that they have. Like, that seems insane to me. Granted, there are somewhat races that have telepathy, but it doesn't really matter. But that's like a racial feature, and it's only with like a limited pool of, well, really a limited person. Like you're limited to, you get telepathy with one person if you choose a specific race, and that is only the race that you like, or only the person that you married you have that psychic connection with. Because I thought that was interesting. But that, like, yeah, things like, I don't know, maybe I intentionally created a low magic setting, right? Because, yeah, like I said, I feel like cantrips are broken in regular 5e at least, right? You can just cast these things all the time, really no consequence, no issue, no cost, right? And initially what I did with mine was I said, all right, I'm going to try and make it an inventory-based spell system. So if you have the materials for the spell, you can cast it. Otherwise, you don't. Which, that's in a similar fashion, though. It's like that's what happens with D&D. It's supposed to be that way, but no one keeps track of that because you just say, okay, I have a components pouch that has everything you would need to cast like a normal spell. It's only for like really big spells, like maybe a resurrection or something like that, where you need to go out of your way to get the materials for the spell. So my thought was to do that at first, and then I realized, man, inventory management is really boring. So then I went and looked at, and what is currently in place is like a spell point system, right? To where you have a limited pool of spell points. Each spell you have costs a certain amount. You can essentially upcast it by spending more spell points, depending on the spell. Not all spells upcast. It's partly because I also really don't like spell slots in D&D as well. I think that it's like, I already cast all my level 1 spells. All right, I can cast this at a level 2 or something like that. And that's fine. Right? It's okay to do that. But it can be really annoying to try and like maneuver your spell slots all the time like that. It's strange. So what I did was, I just eliminated all that nonsense, and I said, you know what, there's no slots, there's no spell levels, right? That's a huge part of it, is there's no spell levels, because I want the spells to be like a discovery-based system, right? Where you start out with 2 spells you can pick from the list, and you can make an attempt to discover the secrets of the universe to get more spells. And that's like one of the downtime activities, and one of the major downtime activities I want to have for the spellcasters, because that's something else I wanted to say is I don't know how many times in 5e we had downtime and I was asked, what do you want to do? And I sat there like, what can I do? They say anything. Okay, is there anything that I can do that'll make an impact on my character? Not really. Well, then why am I doing any of this stuff, right? Like, I didn't know. I mean, maybe now I could think of it more now that I'm much more experienced, but I remember that was like one of my earliest things with D&D. And maybe the DM just didn't set it up well or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But the downtime was so disappointing because I was like, I go and practice my weapon. He's like, okay, you go and practice your weapon. That does nothing. I'm like, okay. Then why'd you ask me what the heck I want to do? Like, I'm thinking of like what would be practical for this. So yeah, I tried to make a downtime system. So as a spellcaster, you're going to want to like use the materials you've gathered, maybe from monsters, maybe from you found in the wild, maybe something valuable, to try and discover the secrets of the universe to get better spells. Which you could discover a spell that's too expensive for you to cast, because lower level spellcasters are going to have, I think the way I have it set up right now is they're probably going to have like 4 or 5 spell points, right? Most spells cost 2 spell points, but a higher level spell might be 5 or 6, right? Or even more. I haven't come up with that many spells yet, but I'm getting there. Like I said, I've only made this up to level 3 for most classes, and some classes only up to level 2. It's hard to come up with like ways to alter your spellcasting ability. I did come up with one alternate spellcaster, somewhat lifted from the ideas behind 5e, but because I looked up D&D 5e like Oracle, something like that, because I thought that was cool. So I made like a somewhat Oracle class where it's like, yeah, you can replace other people's dice, but this either has to be an Oracle of Omens or an Oracle of Prophecy. And Prophecy means you're helping your friends. Omens means you're hurting your enemies with your omenness. So that's kind of what I did with that. I think that's interesting enough. You know, getting extra dice is like some of the level up stuff. I also went with more of a feat system where it's like, okay, each time you level up you get to pick like 2 feats or something like that. And I want to make a system for like halfway leveling as well. What I mean by that is if you multi-class or something similar to that. I'm not fully figured out how the multi-class would work, but I want you to be able to take 1 feat from this class and 1 feat from another class if you so choose. But then I'm not sure you would be allowed, because it may be that may be the prerequisite I have in place, is if you take things from another class, then you need to 2 in their like lower level to take from their higher level. And if you take 1 from each class, and you would need your next level, you would need to take another 1 from each of those classes in order to reach the next level of that thing. So I'm not sold on that yet. I'm thinking it might just be prestige classes. I've thought like, hey, what if I just went to level 3 and then at level 3 you get to like choose prestige classes depending on what you've done in the world and stuff like that. I have thought about that. I'm not sold on it because I think, well, my thought as of right now is I want each class I make to go to level 10 potentially. Maybe prestige classes would just go to 5, so like if you make it to the end of your regular class and the end of your prestige class, you'd be like level 15. I don't know. Still working it out, obviously. But this is just my thoughts as of right now. We'll see how this ages. Hopefully it doesn't age like milk. But I do, I am running a couple campaigns. Well, I have 1 campaign set up so far, and it's not very set up. It's, I only have done like a singular, I've done the same session twice basically. And it ended very differently, and I do like how it ended very differently each time, but I did change the mechanics significantly between that first session and that second session, to where I made the weapons bigger in difference. I nerfed one of the weapons that seemed way too strong, which was small weapons. But I do want weapons to like feel different. I'm kind of struggling with how you might I am struggling with how you might exactly go about what are the words I'm looking for? I'm looking for specific words, and they're not coming to me. But how you might go about making different sizes, or not sizes, but different weapons in the same category. Like right now, I just have like small, medium, and large weapons. There's like a medium weapon that can use nimbleness. That's the other thing I did, is if you look at my character sheets that I've made for this, I created a snipe system for the stat line. So it's strength, nimbleness, intellect, which those 3 are all fairly similar to D&D, which is fine. I think strength is a little bit more broad. It's similar to like constitution and strength together. And then intellect is somewhat wisdom and intelligence together. And the reason for that is because that's S and I. And then we have P, which is presence, which is similar to charisma, but I just like presence a little bit better because I wanted it to be somewhat about body movement as well, just not like your talking ability. So similar to like, think of like stage presence. It's not just like, it's beyond just speaking, right? That's what I want it to come across as. And then the other thing I did, in the skills section, I specifically put seduction because I want it to be intentional if you choose to try and seduce someone rather than just a persuasion check. Because I don't know how many times in D&D it was like, oh, roll me a charisma check for this or that. I would do that, and then suddenly it was flirting, and I'm like, charisma doesn't just mean flirting. I don't know how to say that otherwise, but charisma doesn't just mean flirting. Charisma just means you can like get in with people, you can speak to people well. And it really bothers me that as soon as someone rolls well in charisma, it immediately devolves to flirting, and it's like, that's not necessarily the case. Usually if your charisma is good, if you're not going in to flirt, they don't flirt. I'm not trying to flirt with people all the time. I'm trying to get something from them. I'm trying to communicate with them in a certain way. But that's like, I feel like it's a DM issue rather than a which I've made that mistake before as a DM. But I feel like it's a DM issue rather than like an issue with the actual system. But I wanted to put it there as a skill, seduction as a skill, for the purpose of being discreet about, like, when I say discreet, I don't mean like under the table. I mean like be very clear, be intentional about choosing to seduce someone versus something else, right? Because I feel like that's a real issue. All right, sorry, but that's a little aside. But that's presence. And then energy. Energy is what I would say might track with wisdom, except it's just your magical stat, right? It's how good you are at magic. It is how resistant you are to magic, a lot of magical saves. Like in general, if you're dodging or fighting against something magical, it is an energy. It is an energy check to like survive something magical, or look at something magical, right? It's an energy check. And then lastly is skill, and this takes place of what is it? This takes place of proficiency bonus, right? In 5e especially, it just gives you a proficiency bonus that is like, this is your flat proficiency bonus for this level. Skill is not that way. Skill is a stat that you can change. My system that I've come up with is very big on changing your stats. It is an unbounded system. I want a level 10 character to beat the ass of an entire army of level 1s, right? I want them to just destroy every single level when they come across. There is no chance that a level 1 would win. And you might be like, oh yeah, it's like that in 5e. Level 10 has so many options compared to level 1. No, it's like, I want the level 10 character to potentially not even be able to get hit by like a singular level 1 against them. Several level 1s working together, maybe they can get through their armor. Maybe they can like do some stuff. But a singular level 1 versus a level 10 character, I want there to be like not even a chance of getting an attack in. Like, this level 10 character would potentially one-shot them in one turn, which, yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what class they're, it doesn't matter how big their armor is, they just kind of one-shot them. Yeah, it's not even a contest, basically. Whereas I feel like in 5e, you can punch well above your weight class. And I'm not thinking of like so much PvP. I'm not huge on PvP. I'm not designing around PvP at all. But I do think in terms of that, and several of the enemies that I have set my players up against because I don't have a lot of monsters set up yet. It are like player characters that I came up with and I made to like level 2. They're not like super optimized level 2 characters or anything like that, or level 3 characters. And they're not optimized or anything like that. They're not great. But I think they do like a serviceable job of things. And I think they were sufficiently dangerous. I did try to play against a group that had one more character. So the first group I played with was 4 people. Spellcasting was very different. Everything was very strange. And then the second group I played with was 5 people. And that went very differently. So, the one person being added there made a huge difference, and I should have made the encounter slightly stronger with the addition of that 5th guy. But they also just rolled well, and they made the enemies roll. Or one of them was the Oracle that I made, and they made an enemy roll badly. They stopped death. I think each fight, I think they actually stopped death, which was pretty good. The first combat's meant to be fairly easy, but it is meant to be like a fast and loose combat system where they're attacking you. Especially, I set it up kind of like a horde scenario. It's like 7 on 5. There's 7 little gremlin things, and there's only 5 of them. So yeah, it came pretty close to death. Not a huge. I think it made it exciting for everyone. And then the second one, I think someone was close to dying, but the crow saved them. The crow omen bringer saved them by making the enemy roll badly. So when I think about it, I'm like, I think the encounters are probably fine. Oh well, I'm rambling on. It's like a 22-minute video. I think I'll stop here. But I will maybe focus a little bit more in the future and bring updates.